Good morning, good morning, good morning, y'all. Hey, 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 good morning. Ooh, what's going on here? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to Wake Up and Win Live with your girl, Dr. Najuma. Glad to have you on with us this morning. We're at day 2 of our 31-day journey, releasing all attachments. Let's get in it. Come on, say with me, wake up and win, wake up and win, wake up and win. Super excited. What is going on with my hair this morning? I don't know. I don't know what's happening. It was fine. But anyway, good morning and welcome to Wake Up and Win Live with your girl, Dr. Najuma. So glad to be on with you all this morning. Grateful to have you joining us on this 31-day journey of releasing all attachments. Super excited to share with you more and more about this journey. So, yesterday we kicked off our series, Releasing All Attachments, 31 days. So, we're going the whole month of August breaking down my journey for the last year and some months, releasing all attachments and all the things that were a part of that. And the goal is really to that maybe if you or someone you know is going through something similar where God is challenging you to go through a process of transformation, a process of change and growth, spiritual and practical. Um, that so that you can get out there in life and win on another level. And so I just offer my process, my pain, my journey, and hopes of that maybe it would help somebody watching or somebody listening. So thank you for joining us. But before I get into today's win word part 2, let me reintroduce myself. I am Dr. Najuma. I'm a pastor, a purpose coach. I was using the term spiritual growth coach, but my mentor helped me to get that corrected. So um, he was like, no, you're a purpose coach. I was like, okay. So anyway, pastor, purpose coach, and I do a lot of work here in the city of LA around civic engagement, community development work. And I use this platform to encourage those who have gone through a major loss of any kind to know that you can recover, restore, rebuild, and get back out there and win again. That you, whatever loss you've gone through in your life, you can go through a major loss, recover, restore, rebuild, and get back out there and win again. I also offer grief support to mothers of murdered children. And so, as a mom who lost a child to um, gun violence, part of why this platform was created, in that in my journey, and I'm still in the journey, I haven't finished it, I'm not going to finish it, it's lifelong. Um, I'm learning things that are helping me. I'm learning things that are helping me to continue to live and win, right? And so this platform is to share with you as I'm on my journey the things that I've learned, the things I've experienced, the things that I know for sure, and even some of my questions and what God is doing in this process. So um and releasing all attachments in the last year or so has been part of this journey because there's been a rebirthing. And I would say the rebirthing of me began, when my son was killed, and just even as I sat with his body in the trauma unit, um, when they pronounced his uh, TOD, time of death, I felt even in that moment spiritually that a birthing was happening. Somebody new. And so releasing all attachments is part of that journey. And so let's get into today's win word. So yesterday we kicked it off. Yesterday we kicked everything off, and so today I want to begin with defining the word attachment. Now I know you know what the word attachment means because if you've been to school, you probably had attachment as a spelling word or vocabulary word or whatever. So of course the word attachment means an extension of, right? So it's something that is an extension of another thing. It's an extra part, right? So it's not the original piece, but it's a part to something bigger, right? So when we talk about releasing all attachments, we're talking about the things that have become a part of you, the things that are an extension of you. And this could be very healthy and it could be unhealthy. There are some attachments that are extremely healthy, that have become a part of you, that are an extension of you, that are very healthy. And then there are attachments that are not good for us, that are unhealthy, that are toxic. And so when I heard the voice of the Lord say, release all attachments, let's be very clear. We're talking about the things that have become a part of me or an extension of me that are not and were not healthy. Now, you might be saying, well, that's not me. Because we're quick to say that's not me. And that's not true. We all have things that can become a part of us or an extension of who we are, whether that's spiritually and or physically, right? And so two things that I want to lift up for the purpose of this conversation is when I heard the Holy Spirit say, release all attachments, it was about the things that have become a part of my life, the things that were an extension of myself that were not part of what God was doing or is doing in my life. They are the things that are not going to be of benefit to me or were not of benefit to me. They are the things that God was saying, I need you to shed, right? Disconnect from. It's become a part of you, disconnect from it. It's become an extension of you, disconnect from it, because it's not helping you to become who I've called you to be and all of who I've called you to be. And I will say, and you might be asking a question, so what does has have to do with grief and loss, right? Since this platform is about loss, what does that have to do with this? And I'm going to share with you. When we go through a major loss, and this can be the loss of a child that was extreme loss. It can be divorce, which is also I shared with you. I went through right after losing my son, went through a divorce, two deaths back to back. But it could be the loss of a job. It could be the loss of reputation or an upstanding reputation. People make mistakes and they have what we call moral failures, and they do things in public or that they don't know will impact them later. Somebody records stuff, right? And you lose you so you can go through a major loss. Sometimes it's something that you have no control over. It could be something that you absolutely had control over and you didn't do anything about it, or you didn't do the right thing. It's There's a whole a plethora of things that could be an extreme loss, right? And when those things happen, we become vulnerable to take on things that are not good for us. There's a vulnerability that can open up, right? There is a space there because loss can be a portal, a doorway for things to come in it while you're dealing with loss and grief and sorrow and hurt and disappointment. Those spaces can become portals for things to come in and out, in and out. And so, as a grieving mother, especially in the beginning, and a soon to be ex-wife, when I was going through the divorce, the door was open. There were vulnerabilities created. Um, Space was given for things to come in and to attach themselves, right? Or I invited attachment. I invited things in that were not part of the bigger vision God has, the bigger purpose of my life, right? And so, a couple of things we want to talk about was related to grief or related to great loss is that when we go through great loss and grief, we have to be careful of what does attach to us. We have to be careful of attachments. We have to be careful of the things that come in and out of that portal because you're open. We're emotionally vulnerable, not you, we are emotionally vulnerable. We are sometimes physically vulnerable. We are, psychologically vulnerable. And so things can come in and some things can go out, right? But more importantly, we have to watch for what comes in. And again, that can be totally subconscious. You're not paying attention. You're just trying to get through the day. You're dealing with grief, you're dealing with sorrow, you're dealing with disappointment, hurt, and pain, right? Or it can be something that you actually say, no, come on in. I'm so hurt. I want to invite this in, right? And there's no judgment. It's just a reality. And so when I heard God say last year, release all attachments, I got clear. I wasn't clear right away, but I did get clear after some time of prayer and fasting about what God was really saying, because I needed to understand that even in my grieving and my disappointment about life, some things had entered in. Some things had entered in, and some things that enter in that awaken some other stuff, right? And we're going to get into it. It's nothing crazy, but we'll get into all that. And so I want to invite you to think about today what things, what people, what habits, what mindsets, what junk has become an attachment, an extension of you, a part of you that's not naturally a part of you, but it's become a part of you because you were vulnerable. Because you were vulnerable, this thing entered in. Because you were vulnerable, this thing became a part of you. Because you were vulnerable, this thing had access to you. Because you were vulnerable due to great loss and or grieving, that now there are, the door was open, the emotional portal, the psychological portal, even the physical portal was opened, and now something or someone or a mindset or a habit has now become attached to you. What is that? Examine that. Pay attention to that. Look at that. See that for what it is. Because what God was saying to me when he said, release all attachments, was there are some things that attach themselves to you. And it's not what I have for you. There are some stuff, there's some things, and some of it was physical, some of it was emotional, some of it was spiritual, right? And attachments are real. And again, if I wasn't vulnerable, it probably never would have happened. If I wasn't vulnerable, those things would not have had space to come in. But the vulnerability due to great loss, the vulnerability due to brokenness, the vulnerability due to hurt and pain created space for things to creep in that now became attached. What are those things? And so that was what God was challenging me to look at. That's what God was challenging me to pay attention to. And again, there's no judgment, because when you're going through great loss, when you're going through grieving, when you're hurting, when you're broken, we are vulnerable. We are human beings, and that can be part of our human experience. What can't happen is we stay in that place. What can't happen is that we just let things exist and don't challenge them, and don't correct, or don't grow and get into a healthier place, healthier space. So I praise God that God loved me enough, and that God spoke to me in that way to bring my attention to some things I had not paid attention to, due to vulnerability, due to an emotional, psychological, physical vulnerability, right? And so there's no judgment, but there is opportunity. And the opportunity is, what are those things that have become attached? And again, for me, the major portal was losing my son, and then going through divorce, and then other loss, right? Um, and the vulnerability that happened as a result of all that. And that space that was opened up, and the vulnerability also created space for other things that had kind of either been sitting low, or we're just so far in the past. It's like, you're not thinking about it, and then life happens, and now stuff is coming up, right? And so that's what the other thing I want to offer before we end this morning is, this is why we encourage, and me especially as a pastor, encourage therapy, encourage being in community with the right kind of people, allowing yourself to be surrounded by voices of wisdom, because these vulnerabilities happen in our lives, and then they become portals, doorways for things to come attached. And when we're not getting therapy, when we're not in right conversation with wise voices, when we're not surrounded in healthy community, um, this cycle, right, and these doorways and portals that that allow stuff to come and get attached to you just keep happening over and over again. And now you're trying to find yourself. Now you're trying to figure out, who are you? Now you're trying to ask, now you're trying to figure out, well, how did I even get here? Right? All these other questions. And so this may not be you, but also use this series as an opportunity to make sure, like, let me guard my life differently. Let me manage my life differently, right? Let me do something different with my life and how I do life day to day. So this may not be you, but these teachings, the series, can be helpful to you, so you know how to process through. And maybe it is you, and you're saying, wow, yeah, there's some attachments, there's some things that have become a part of me or extension of me that I didn't see coming, and I don't like, and or they're antithetical to what God is trying to do in your life and what God has for you to do, be had, to do, be, and do, be, have, and or possess in life. And so we want to release all attachments. So thank you for part two of releasing all attachments. And yes, we're taking it bit by bit, chunk by chunk. I started to, let me say this as we close our second close. I started to do like a long teaching series, but I'm learning that chunking things down into bits and bites and pieces is a healthier way for people to learn. And it's just easier. It's just easier than doing like a 3 hour video or a 2 hour video because ain't nobody gonna watch no 2 hour video. I'm not. So yeah, so stick along for the ride, and you can always come back and watch whatever piece and part you want to watch. So part two, thank you for watching or being with us. Part two of releasing what wake up and win, releasing all attachments. And so have an amazing day, and let's get up, let's get out there, and let's go win. Let's get up, let's get out there, and let's go win. And if I can answer any questions for you, my contact information is below. Feel free to reach out as we build upon this series, Releasing All Attachments. I'm out, y'all. Peace.